Good morning, all. Happy Easter. So yesterday and this morning, I completed One Nil, which is a soccer management game using the EGE engine. For those who may know, there's an old DOS soccer management game from way back in the 90s called One Nil, and I think there was a sequel called 2-0. It is One Nil was my single favorite PC sports simulator that I ever owned outside of Front Page Sports Football. One Nil was truly amazing. It was a text-based DOS game. You start your career as a manager of any club in the universe, and of course you had to buy, sell players and simulate matches, and it was addicting. It was truly one of the most amazing experiences I ever had on the old DOS PC, IBM PC. And so as an homage to that, I wanted to use my new EGE engine. Again, I talked about this yesterday in a video. I've made this EGE game engine available at Creative Commons so people can use it to make their own games. And so I thought I would make and flesh out a full soccer management game. And so it's taken me, it's only a few pages. This is version 1. Again, you can grab it, it's free. It uses the 2D6 engine. I identify what you must have for your ratings. So every position player will have a form from 0 to 5. They will have a positioning rating, one single number. They will have a marking number. So for those that don't know, form in soccer is how well players play, right? Form is generally on a scale of 1 to 10. However, for this game, using the EGE engine, we need to have form between 1 and 5. But in this particular management game, we have to have a 0 for those teams who have no money to field Form 1 players. So you will see players that have a 0 form and they'll have no ratings. They're just placeholders for teams that are really low-tier teams. And 5, these are superstars, and they are dominant players. The positioning, this is the chance for players' number to come up on the tier TER roll. Remember the turn engagement roll, in which they would get a shot on goal. All right, it's a single number, right? And marking, for those who don't know, in soccer, this is a defensive terminology for marking a man. So this would be defense. So any player, let's say, for instance, the TER roll is a 5, and I have a Form 4 player that has a shot on goal on 5. I would then look across at all of the defensive players, and if anybody has a marking of 5, they would stop that shot on goal. So it's super simple. It allows you to play games in 9 rolls of the dice, but involve an entire roster of players, or starting players. And these numbers all have to be single numbers from either 2 to 5 or 9 to 12. Goalies will have a form, again, 1 to 5. Your goalies shouldn't be zeros unless they're backups. 1 to 5. And they will have one number. This is, or a pair of numbers, or a range of numbers, or to save for matches. So what this means is if, let's say, that earlier example, I have a Form 4 player who rolls a 5, and no one on the defense has a 5 marking, you would immediately check the goalie. And if the goalie does not have a 5 save, then it's a goal. That's simple, right? Form 4, bam, 5, and goal. Okay. All right. Player managers will start with 8 coins. Now, however, at the end of this, I talk about creating leagues and how many coins you need to create certain tiers of leagues. Like the Premier League would be tier 1, all the way down to tier 5. And your team, if you want to play the game rules as written, you would start with 8 coins in tier 5, which is the bottom rung of professional soccer. However, you could use the tiers and create all the, every team in the universe, or at least every team that you'd like to have in your universe. And you can roll coins for every team. Okay, so don't worry about this being locked so low. But the gist of it is that you would start at the bottom, tier 5, with only 8 coins to start building your team. You will earn coins for goals scored, clean sheets, wins, and draws. So what's a goal? Well, everybody knows what a goal is. You score a goal. Clean sheets is when your goalie shuts out the opponent. A win is a win, and a draw is a tie, right? The manager can save their coins or spend them liberally to buy or trade for other players. Great teams will have between 24 and 30 coins. Really superstar teams could be as high as, 50 coins, right? Okay. But again, we're talking about the Manchester Uniteds, the Arsenals, the Chelseas. They're going to be up there in the 30s and 40s over the course of their career. When you start and you roll up teams for Tier 1, there could be guys that roll up, 56 coins, right? Which means you're going to make teams that are just loaded with 4 and 5 players. All right. But anyway, rolling dice is going to keep your leagues and your teams dynamic. The gameplay paradigm, for those, again, who have played Gladiators or Tally-Ho or have read my EGE rule book, we're going to have a paradigm. The highest form players always earn the right to first refusal for an actual ball control moment, which would be a shot on goal. The turn engagement roll is first applied to the highest form players. So let's say each team on the pitch has 4 players with a 5. You're going to check those players to see if the TER roll is applied to them first. And you'll go in that order. And then, of course, if none of those Tier 5 players are affected by the die roll, then you go to the Tier 4 player, the Form 4 players, the Form 3, the Form 2, the Form 1. Okay. So you're going to have, so for instance, when you build a team, you're not really, so put it this way, the more Form 5 players you have, the more they're going to literally stifle any team's chances at doing something if they don't have Form 5s. So when you build your teams, if you have a lot of Form 2 players, every team you face that has Form 3s, 4s, and 5s, they're going to get right to first refusal on that ball before you even get to your players. So it's important to have at least a Form 5 or at least one Form 5, one Form 4 player, so you have a chance at getting control of a ball on any die roll. So it'll take you time as you play, to realize, holy cow, I see how this works. So Form 5 players always get right to the ball first. Okay. The game turn, it's your example. Again, just like the other games, you're going to roll 2d6. It's going to give you a number. That raw number is applied to the ratings. So here's an example. Before every game, you're going to roll a pregame injury roll. If you roll, when you roll that 2d6, you're going to apply that number like you would on the pitch to the first form player. So let's say before this game, I roll a 5. I have to look at the Form 5 players first. If he has a 5, he's injured for the game. So Smith for Chelsea would be injured for this game. So I would put a slice through Smith, and I would move everybody up, and that means Harris, Grammer, Hill would be starting for Chelsea at a 0 form, meaning they'll be completely worthless. But they have to be on the pitch. You have to fill the team. But in this case, this example, we rolled a 7. So neither team has an injury. By the way, you're going to look, if you roll a 5, if they're any team with that 5 is going to suffer an injury, but you start with Smith. So let's say, for instance, over here, I look at Rose. Nope, no 5. Bentley, yep, so Bentley's out. So Smith would be out, Bentley would be out for this. Now, these could be injuries. These could be, suspensions. It doesn't matter. They just wouldn't be here, right, for the game. But you can only have the one injury. So Smith would be eliminated and Bentley would be eliminated. If you roll a 6, 7, or 8, there's no chance anyone will ever be eliminated, because there is never going to be a player with a 6, 7, or 8 positioning score. So the first rating is your positioning. The second rating is your marking, right? The first rating is your form. This guy gets the right to first refusal on every single die roll. So does Rose. Okay, so that's it. What this means, 1527, Chelsea has 15 men on the roster, 10 starters plus the starting goalie, and then they're going to have their backups and one backup goalie. The goalie, by the way, matter of fact, it was a bad example. If you roll the 5 injury, if you have a 5 goalie, he has to be injured first. So if I roll the 5, and I look at Form 5, I have 2 on Chelsea. I have Smith and I have Grant. Well, the goalie must be injured first if he has a 5, because I rolled a 5. Grant would be out, replaced by Burns for today's game, and Smith would be in the ball game. Down here, I had rolled a 5, so Rose would not go. Bentley doesn't have a 5, so we don't worry about it. And then we look at, not Bentley, Billings. Then we would look at Bentley. Yep, so Bentley would be injured. So Arsenal would actually have to move up Davis or Cole or Weber into the starting ranks at the bottom. And Grant would be out for this game, and Burns would be in, right? Okay. So that gives you an idea how that works. Looking at the two lineups, each team has a Form 5 player. Chelsea also has a Form 4 player. These players are always checked against the TER first. Remember, TER is turn engagement roll. First, if the turn engagement roll number matches the player position rating number, then we have a shot on goal. It's that simple. So if I roll a 5 on the turn 1, I look at Smith and Rose first. Smith has a 5, that means he gets a shot on goal. I would look over here to see if any defensive player has a marking of 5. No, that's a goal. Smith would score. Well, I would look at then, if no defensive player has a marking of 5 to stop that shot on goal, I would then look at the goalie. If he has a 5, it's a stop. It's a save. He does not. So the very first roll of the game, Smith would score a goal for Chelsea. Roll the dice for turn 2. Let's say it's a 6. No action. Nothing happens. Turn 3. I roll an 8. No action. Nothing happens. Turn 4. I roll a 9. We got to look at, so it's 5, 9, no. 9, no. Gordon is the next highest player in the game. He has a 9, so he'd get a shot on goal. Does anybody over here have a 9 stop? Yes. Bentley and Fisker would stop any shot on goal, and that would lead to a corner kick because it would be the final shot on goal by any team, and that would lead to a corner kick by Lumen, and we'd roll the dice to see if any of our scorers or any of our players can score on that die roll. And then again, we would look at the goalie to see if he can save another shot on goal from a corner kick. So that's how corners occur. If there's a tie, so let's say Smith is a 5-5-2 and Rose is a 5-5, and we roll a 5 on a turn, there would be a tie. This would be a yellow card on the away team. So let's say Arsenal's on the road, and let's say Smith is a 5-5, Rose is a 5-5, we roll a 5. Rose would suffer a yellow card, and we keep playing. Then we go on to turn 2, right? So you can have, and then of course if Rose scores 2 yellow cards in a game, he will be ejected, get a red card and be ejected, and they'll have to play a man down, right? So that's how cards work. Okay. So looking at the two lineups, I already talked about that. However, defensive player marking. So I walk through how the game works, how you can score, etc. The tier number is always checked first against the TER number is always checked first against the positioning numbers of all players. The highest form wins the ball. In case of ties between opposing players, a yellow card will be awarded against the away player. Okay, player in position wins a shot on goal unless a defensive player with a marking number is equal to the TER roll. Then it is stolen, and the TER is checked against the next tier player. So we don't get a corner kick until we've exhausted every potential shot on goal. So let's say the first roll was a 9. Gordon, we get a shot on goal. Nope, Bentley stuffed it. So we go down and see, does anybody else in the game have a 9? In order, right? So does James know? Yep, Fisker would then get a shot. So basically, Bentley would stop the ball. He would kick it out to Fisker. Fisker would get a shot on goal. Does anybody over here have a 9 stop? Yep. Klinger would stop it. And then we keep going back on the 2s. Is there any 9s here for shots? Nope, that would exhaust all shots, which means Fisker would have shot on goal. Klinger would have stopped it. That would lead to a corner kick. Their corner kick, Arsenal was the team with the last shot on goal, stopped by Klinger. So that means Dennison would create a corner kick, and we would roll that 2d6 again to see if any of these numbers come up as a shot. If they do, that same number is checked against the opposing goalie to see if a goal is saved, right? So that's how it works. And it's very fast, very fluid, and you involve every single player. And of course, the game is about buying and selling players, or buying players to try to create, work your way up through the tiers to become a successful club. Okay. Where am I at here? Defensive position, shot on goal, unless the defensive player has a marking number, then we keep moving through. So one die roll is going to go through this array of numbers. So the first turn die roll, will go through this array of numbers until it's exhausted. If the final exhausted had been a shot on goal and a stop, that's a corner kick always. If it's a shot on goal save, then it's over. It turns over. We roll for the next turn. Okay. Each player position wins a shot on goal. Blah blah blah. Okay. Actual gameplay example. So I walk you through how the game works, and then we talk about players, teams, and managers. This is the most important part of EGE 1-0. Is the roster of players. Each manager will start the game with 8 coins to purchase players from the market and to create their same dice rolls. So you won't be able to purchase players from the market unless you make all the players in the game first. I suggest you make your league of teams, and then make your team. So go ahead and roll up and create every player for all the teams in your league, then make your own team, right? And that's where you would start. And then I wouldn't worry about moving up into tier 2, tier 3, moving up the tiers until your team wins the league. Your team wins your league, then you can make all the teams above you, right? Or you can make the entire, you can make the entire 4 leagues, the bottom tier league, the second tier, all the way up to Division 2, all the way up to Premier League, if you want to, for tournaments and things. All right. So the value of a player is the same as their form. So again, if you want to make a 5 form player, he's going to cost you 5 coins. And yes, there would conceivably be teams that have just 1 or 2 5 players and no one else rated, right? Which means those 2 teams have 2 dominant players that are very expensive. But like anything, you're either going to have a roster full of decent players, or you might have teams with not a lot of good players, or you might have teams with not a lot of great players, but pretty modern players, etc. So it's entirely up to you how you build out your leagues and teams. But I would build the league first, then make your own team, and then you know what you're dealing with as you try to build a winning team. Anyway, so we walk you through how to do that, how to create players based on it is completely up to the dice when you create players, but you get to choose what their form is. And yes, you could pay 5 coins for a player that has bad ratings or no ratings. So I'll say that again. You could say, okay, I'm going to make a 5 form player. I'm going to spend 5 coins, and I roll the dice, and I end up rolling up no position rating and only a marking rating. Then he would be a 5-level defenseman. If I rolled up a 5-level player and I rolled up and he had a position rating, but he had no marking rating, then he would basically be a striker. And if I rolled up a player and I happened to fail his position roll and I fail his marking roll, he would be worth 5 and have no ratings. So you could have a very expensive star with no ratings. What that means is he still gets right to first refusal. So when the dice drop, you have to look at him first. Well, he would have no ratings, so he cannot impact play, but he's costing your team 5 coins. So at some point, you're clearly going to want to cut that guy off the team, right? But yes, you can conceivably spend 5 coins and roll up a player that has no, like here's one, O'Henry. He's Form 2. He has a 3 shot on goal, but he has no marking rating. So this guy plays no defense. So you would imagine this is a striker, probably. Or it could be like a right winger forward or something, right? And over here, we have Baldwin, who has no chance at a shot on goal, but he does play defense. So this guy might be a sweeper, right? So you would imagine Baldwin here's a sweeper. What matters is you put him in order of their form, right? Because he can still come up when you're looking at 2s, right? He just won't come up for a shot, right? But you still want him on the pitch because he can stop anybody who shoots over. For instance, if Klinger gets a shot on goal with 11, Baldwin will stop it. Bam, right? So you look at this guy and say, what's his value? Well, he's gonna stop any shot Klinger gets. So you want to look at those matchups, right? So you can imagine Baldwin at sweeper will at least quash anything Klinger does. He's marking Klinger, right? Rose is marking Grady, right? And no one's really marking Smith. So Smith's out front as a striker. There's no one really marking Smith. He's all over the field. He's your number 10, right? He's moving all over the pitch. Nobody can really mark him. They're going to have to just kind of pick him up as he moves through the field. But over here we got We got Bentley and Fisker who can mark Gordon. We've got, over here, we don't have anyone who can handle Charles or Stratum. So you can look at these lineups and say, ooh, if I roll 11s and 12s, these guys are going to get goals because there's no one over here who can stop them, and the goalie cannot stop them. So 11 or 12 roll in a game against Arsenal, with Chelsea and Arsenal, is going to be a guaranteed goal for these guys, right? Okay, so it gives you an idea how the games work, right? So again, elegant and simple. It just takes a minute to get your head around. You've got to go through the array of numbers in order, and the form dictates who wins the ball first. So these guys do not get that 11 or 12 if there's someone above them with an 11 or 12. So if Smith had an 11, he would automatically get a shot on goal. These guys would not, right? Because he is a superior player in the game over these guys, right? Okay, so you start to see how the Form 5 guys are going to have a lot of plays in a game, even if they fail to roll their numbers. Okay, so I think that's explaining it. So I walk you through that, okay, and then I talk about the reality of the game is about building a roster and managing players and spinning coins. I walk you through that. So what else? Goalies, again, same thing. You decide what your form is for your goalie. However, this is very important. The form for goalies only comes up in the pregame injury check. So having a one goalie is not bad, except if I roll an injury rating, anybody with a higher form than him could be injured first. So you could have a bad goalie with a 5. One thing's good about that is when the injury roll comes up, he would be out before your best player. So sometimes it might be wise to have a 5 goalie just to eat an injury for your best position player. However, or have a 1, which means anybody else can get injured. So I could have a great goalie who's a form 1, and great would be this 5. 5 is good. 5,9 would be a fantastic goalie. He would stop 5s and 9s, which are the highest rolls in the game, right? They count. So you could have a 1 value goalie with a 5 and 9. The problem, and of course he'll rarely ever get injured unless you have a lot of 1s, right? Okay. So again, the game is designed where these arrays of numbers that are going to be teams are going to be completely organic. When you drop the dice to play, you end up with these remarkably organic results, which is what Gladiators does. It's what Tally-Ho does. It creates these very organic games. I can't explain it, but it is my most elegant game design. I mean, I'm addicted to it. I can't not do this. Goalies, anyway, you create goalies. At first, again, there is no way for goalies to have 2. I mentioned up here you can have a set of you can have a set of numbers, but I don't provide how you would create a goalie with a set of numbers. So you could have a simple rule that you get to roll twice. You roll for his first number, and then you roll again to see if he has a second number. So they'll never have a range. They could have a 3 and an 11, right? So I would see that as being tolerable for really good goalies, right? Because if you roll a 6, 7, or 8, they won't have a rating. You'll have to assign them a 2 or a 12. So goalies will have at least a 2 or a 12, even if you roll a 6, 7, or 8 when you're creating them, right? On a position player, if you roll a 6, 7, or 8, they will have no rating, which again is how these guys up here ended up with a no marking rating for O'Henry. He is clearly a forward or a striker or a winger. He's way out on the wing and is running the field. He's not necessarily dealing with until it's, that's not to say these guys don't play the ball. They just aren't. They aren't going to make defensive moves, right? And this guy, Baldwin, clearly has no interest in shooting the ball. He's just not a shooter, right? Okay. But you can have guys like this here. These guys, once I rolled them, they had 6 and 7s and 8s. They had no ratings. So they cost me 1 for these teams, but they don't have any, they can't impact play. And yes, you're going to have teams that may only have 1 guy that through the course of a game could impact play, right? And so you're just going to have those games where there's some guys who cannot score. Some teams will not be able to score, right? Let's say this team was a tier 1 team, had 1 player with a 9 shot, and happen to be playing a goalie with a 9 stop, they're never going to score. So that game's going to be, you're rolling to find out how bad Arsenal whoops that team, right? Okay. Like soccer, the dynamism of professional world soccer is truly remarkable to me. I mean, what makes soccer a remarkable sport is the winning 11. Getting those 9 players together, exercising strategies and tactics. But you just, as the ball moves around the pitch, you don't know who's going to make the big stop, the big play, the big, draw a yellow card, etc. Right? Okay. So it makes for a dynamic and organic soccer game. All right, then I walk you through, again, earnings. How do you earn coins? How you're paid to earn coins. How you cannot get any coins at all, even if you have a great game. And then again, the best teams will have high form players with good percentages for positioning, positing. Jesus, that's the wrong word. I got to retype that. Marketing and saves. Best practices. A player should make every team in the league before creating their own team. And then I give you an idea of what the tier 1 teams are. These would be 9d6 coins. So to make Chelsea, I would roll 9d6. That's going to give me an average of about 31 coins. There could be more, could be less. And I would then buy Chelsea's players by creating all of Chelsea's 15 players, spending their coins for forms, right? And I would do that for every team in the tier 1, etc. So when you start the game, it implies you get to start with 8 coins. So you would put your team in tier 5, and you would roll for all the other teams how many coins they have. So there'll be some teams in your tier 5 league that could have 12 coins, which means those are teams that probably were relegated and are going to be potentially at the top next year to go back up into tier 4. For those who don't know, there's promotion and relegation in Europe, and generally the top 2 teams that win a league are in the top 2. They'll get promoted into tier 4, and the bottom 2 teams of tier 4 in a season will drop down into tier. And so you eventually want to build up your team with rich players and lots of coins until you are in the Premier League facing top teams annually, right? Okay. Anyway, notes: do not fret if teams have players with high form but with poor or no ratings. Follow the rules. Create players and teams just as described. Set every team starting 11 and roll them dice. And there you have it, folks. This is 1-0, is designed and written by Jason Graham using Creative Commons EGE license. All rights are reserved for this particular version. However, again, people are free to take this and make it better, right? Turns, game turns, by the way. Every turn of a soccer game is 9 turns. Where's it at? I think I defined that. I better have defined that somewhere. The first 4 turns, after the 4th turn, it's halftime. And then turns 5 through 9 are the second half of a soccer game, right? So you're only going to roll dice for the TER 9 times. However, you may pick it up and roll multiple times for corner kicks, right? That's it. It's that simple. So you're going to roll. It's either going to be a shot on goal with a stop by a defensive player, which will create another check for another shot, or it'll create a corner kick for the team that last shot the ball, or it's going to create a save situation where Smith gets a shot off, nobody can stop him, but this goalie has a 5 and he saves against Smith. So, for instance, Gordon, the second highest tier player, so we got Smith and Rose. These guys are always going to be checked first. Then we're going to always check Gordon third. If I roll a 9, Gordon's going to get a shot on goal. However, Bentley or Fisker will stop it. And if I rolled a 9, that means Fisker is going to create a shot, and that's going to be stopped by Klinger, which is going to create an automatic. So anytime I roll a 9, we already know what's going to happen. Arsenal's going to get a corner kick. And then I'm going to pick up the dice and roll again to see if I roll a 4, 5, 9, 11, or 12. That's it. That's how simple the corner kick is. So we know when I roll a 9, I could look at this and see mathematically a 9 is always going to be Arsenal in a corner kick. I can look over here and say a 5 is always going to be a goal. If I roll a 5, Chelsea will always score a goal on a 5. Right? So I can look at these numbers and see, wow, so Chelsea will score on a 5. They'll never score on a 9. On a 10, they'll be stopped here. So they can't score on a 10. 3. they could, yep, they can score on a 3. So if I roll a 5 or a 3, well, I got 2 3s here, right? And then I have an 11. So can we score on an 11 here? 9, no. So we could score on 5, 3, and 11. Over here, they're going to score on a 4. Nope, we got a stop. So Jones would get a stop, which would create a corner kick for Arsenal. And again, you want to roll. When you roll the corner kick, there is no stop. You roll the corner kick, you're just looking at the save. You're looking at the score and the save. So you'd say, how can Arsenal score if they don't have any numbers? Because a corner kick could occur. And that corner kick, you just pick up and if you rolled any of these scoring numbers, I look immediately at to see if they score, and he stops it. So a corner kick could produce a score on a 4, a 9, 11, or 12 for Arsenal. Over here, a corner kick could produce a score on a 5, a 10, a 3, a 4, and 11. So corner kicks for Chelsea are where they're going to produce. They have the best chance to produce goals. Corner kicks for Arsenal, same. So you can see how simple it is, how the array of numbers creates these dynamic games based on lineups, form, and ratings, right? And then, of course, you've got the stop rating for the goalies, right? So anyway, you can see that there are, I don't know, I'm not the kind of guy who can do the math. Jesus, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to determine the math here, but let's say there's hundreds or thousands of potential permutations between teams and players, right? This particular game, there's just a handful of outcomes that we know. We know that Chelsea can score on a 5. We know that Chelsea can score on a 3. And we also know if a corner kick comes up, they can score on anything but a 9. Well, not anything. 5, 10, 3, 4, and 11, right? And over here, we know that Arsenal can score on an 11 or 12 because there is no stop here, and there is no goalie stop on 11 or 12. So an 11 or 12 will score a goal for Arsenal. See, so you can look at 2 matchups and kind of quickly look at the math and say, oh, I just need to jot these numbers down. And when I roll that TER, I know exactly what's happened. If it's a tie, it's going to create yellow cards, etc. Which is why pregame you want to roll to see if anybody's injured, because every time Chelsea and Arsenal play, there could be a chance that somebody's injured, which will change all of this math every time they match up, right? Okay, and not to mention when Arsenal's at home, Chelsea would suffer the yellow cards, right? Okay, I think I've said enough. I just wanted to share this because I've been working on this for the last couple of days. Yesterday I showed how you can make a quick soccer game using the EGE just basic team ratings and make a fast-playing quick soccer game. The goal was always, I was always working on from that. I had been working on a full roster management type game. Again, ideally something like 1-0, the old computer game, far more sophisticated. You had actual contracts with money. Players would age and they would get better and get worse, and they would be traded and they would retire. And 1-0 was remarkable. I'm not putting any kind of detail like that in here. Those things would become narrative as maybe you move through teams and you could have every team attempt to, get rid of their poor players, which would be retiring them or whatever. But I'm not going that deep yet. There's a chance that, version 6 of 1-0 would have very elaborate paradigms for retirement and etc. But because I'm not creating because these are tabletop games meant to be played with pencil, paper, and a couple of pair of dice, I don't want to spend my life managing 300 teams for soccer players to dump players, grab players. What I want to do is simulate putting together my winning 11 and then trying to purchase players to improve so I can climb the ranks. So I don't want to really simulate the whole world around. However, if you were playing in a league with friends, you can imagine if you had 6 buddies, you could have a pretty engaging transfer system and trade system. This is not meant to be a complete financial. It's not meant to simulate AI of every manager and every team, working to find young players and age them up and build them up and sign them to long contracts and win championships. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.